Look, I saw what was going on with Michael Brown and some of the early viral videos of police violence. I wanted to do something, but protesting is just not my jam. I'm not saying that people shouldn't protest, go for it, but it seemed hot outside. I just didn't want to do it.
I'm sorry there, but Michael Brown was guilty. The cop did nothing wrong. And I have a feeling that you've fallen for the hands up, don't shoot crap, just like everybody else did. Just to be clear to everyone, the whole don't shoot hands up thing was started by Michael Brown's friend. He made it up. And then when people heard about that, they all claimed to be witnesses and heard the same thing. The evidence was given to a grand jury, and they came to the conclusion, it was an unmistakable one, that the whole hands up, don't shoot thing was a fabrication by witnesses who simply made it up. They lied. Not to say that there weren't witnesses that supported the cops' story. There were plenty. And a lot of them were black. And guess what? Their stories were credible. Their take on the events matched the forensic evidence. There is no doubt about it. The officer, Darren Lewis, did nothing wrong and had to leave the force anyway. I don't even think he was ever able to get a job as a cop anymore. And all because a certain jackass made up a narrative and took it to the media.
And so I thought, I want to do something. And the only thing I know how to do is I'm one of the world's biggest data nerds. So I said, this is going to be the easiest paper I ever write. I'm going to go get some data. I'm going to go show that the police are biased. Finally, people are going to like me. And my grandmother's going to go, you showed that the police don't like black people. Really? What are you doing up there? Right? Like this was I had it all laid out. And then I had dinner with a colleague of mine, and I was telling him about my plan. And he says, you know, Roland, when you work on schools and other stuff like that, you really just are in the schools. And so it's weird for me, strange that you would just download police data and not understand more about the police. He says, I wonder what the police are maximizing. A very econ kind of thing to ask. I wonder what the police are maximizing. And it dawned on me in that moment, I didn't know, nor did I think I cared. So I said, okay, fine. I didn't give him credit in the moment, but I left and said, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go figure out what police maximize. So I set up ride-alongs in Camden, Philadelphia, Houston, some places in Massachusetts to ride along with the police. Now, back to 1991. I don't like the police very much. I don't.
What had been your experience with the police?
I had been roughed up by the police. I've had guns pulled on me. Mind you, they pulled me over and I decided it would be a good idea to get out of the car and walk away. The details are important, probably.
And why did he do that? Because he had a lot of people telling him that that was the right thing to do. Big mistake.
But in any event, I didn't like their customer service. And so I just didn't like police. They came, they took half my family away. Granted, they were selling a lot of drugs, but again, not the greatest customer service. So I was biased against the police. I'm not, that's obvious. I went and I don't think I've received a better education since my grandmother taught me to read. It's a hard job. And I know that sounds obvious sitting on a stage. It's a really hard job.
I hope that donut operator has heard this interview. He would probably get a big kick out of this. Rick over at Good Luck America, he probably wouldn't like it much at all.
I am a terrible police officer. After 4 hours, everyone looked like a criminal to me. I don't know if I was hangry. I don't know what it was, but I'm telling you, I'm serious. They were like, you could never be a cop. Because I was like, hey, let's pull over. That kid's got a basketball. I don't like it. I participated in these weapons training thing, not real weapons, relax, but like these weapons trainings where there's simulations, and some guy, like I'm in the building, the guy walks out, he's got a baby, I shoot the guy right in the head, and they're like, what was about the baby? I said, sorry, I didn't see the baby. You know, I was a bad police officer. But what I really did...
And by the way, this happens a lot. Anytime you put a real person into these situations, they typically fail pretty bad. Now, I'm not saying that the police are particularly great now. I mean, our standards have dropped a lot, but it is much harder to be a police officer than most people think. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I'm serious. I realized the job is really hard. It was the end of a 12-hour shift in Camden. And we get a call for a potential overdose in a row house. It's an abandoned building. We bust in. A person dies within 6 feet of me. And it shook me up a little bit. And so I looked at the guys I was with and I said, yo, how about beers on me? And they said, what do you mean beers are on you? I said, I don't know how to say it. Do you want me to speak in Greek? I mean, I don't know. It's beers are on me. We should leave here. Let the paramedics take over. We should go. And they said, we got to go back to work. And I said, but we just saw somebody die. And the police chief overheard me, and he was incredulous. He says, Roland, if I gave everybody a break every time someone died, no one would cover the shifts. And I was like, wow, it is a hard job. And so
And by the way, that's a very powerful statement he just made, that somebody has died and you got to go back to work. You have to just brush this thing off and carry on.
Through these experiences, long story short, I collected a lot of data, and those experiences helped me understand what types of data to collect. We collected millions of observations on everyday use of force that wasn't lethal. We collected thousands of observations on lethal force. And the key question, I alluded to it earlier in a bit of a joke, but the key question is not just this arbitrary, silly snapshots that some journalists, not named Barry, do a lot, which is black people are 13% of the population and they are 50% of the police shootings. I'm sorry about that, but I don't know what that has to do with the question, right? And it was in this moment in 2016 that I realized people lose their minds when they don't like the result, right? And so what my paper showed, you'll see tomorrow, like some of you, was that, yes, we saw some bias in the low-level uses of force, every day pushing up against cars and things like that. People tend to like that result. But we didn't find any racial bias in police shootings.
Well, what you need to do there, Roland, is make it up. If you don't get the results, keep collecting data until you do, if you ever do, or fake it. Just fake the data. I mean, if you're going to be a professor, you got to know how to do this, and that's what you got to do. Or do what they call the file drawer effect. You take all that research and you shove it into the file drawer and you pretend it doesn't exist. And that happens a lot. If you have, for example, an LGBTQ team of professors and they're doing a study on, let's say, how good are LGBTQ at being school teachers, and the results come out negative, they are not going to publish it. They will not do it. They will simply bury it. And you can put your money on it. That'd be the easiest $100 you ever make. Again, it's the evidence box. You have the evidence, so what would you do? You would dig a hole in your backyard, you lay it in there, and you put the dirt on top. That's what they would do.
Now, that was really surprising to me because I expected to see it. The little known fact is I had 8 full-time RAs that it took to do this over nearly a year.
8 RAs? Wow, that is a lot. And I'm being dead serious here. Professors typically are lucky to have 1, maybe 2. Now, keep in mind, I come from the land of engineering, which is a little bit tough to find RAs. But still, 8 RAs working full-time? Wow, that's a lot of manpower.
When I found this surprising result, I hired 8 fresh ones and redid it to make sure.
Or perhaps he hired some new ones to see if they could somehow get better results that would align to his political philosophy. That could have happened here. Okay? The very fact, though, that he decided to say, hey, it's what it is, that is very commendable. All right? But he may not have been quite so honest on the first round. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
They came up with the same exact answer, and I thought it was robust. And then I went to go give it, and my God, all hell broke loose.
Tell us about that. What was the
Oh, I mean, well, your former paper published a thing, published a report about it, and it was a 104-page dense academic economics paper with a 150-page appendix, okay? It was posted for 4 minutes when I got my first email. This is full of shit. Doesn't make any sense. And I wrote back, how'd you read it that fast? That's amazing.
They read the abstract, and that's all it took.
You are a genius. People lost their minds. I mean, it was like colleagues of mine were going, well, I don't believe these results. He's using regressions. I'm like, well, what the hell else we been using? I mean, we've been using them for ever. That's what you use.
Regression analysis. Oh, it's great until it produces the results that you don't like. So what you do then is that you take this paper and you mix it with a whole bunch of other papers. Somehow you'll get the results to come out. And that's called meta-analysis. It's garbage, it's crap, but it is what dominates a lot of the soft sciences and liberal arts. Just take 100 papers, congeal them into this gruel, and then hopefully you will get the results that you want. And if it doesn't seem to make any sense to you, you'd be right. My view of it is, if your results don't have statistical significance, then do it again and do it right, or give up.
And I had colleagues take me to the side and say, don't publish this. You'll ruin your career. I said, what are you talking about? I said, what's wrong with it? Do you believe the first part? Yes. Do you believe the second part? Well, the issue is they just don't fit together. We like the first one, but you should publish the second one another time. I said, let me ask this. If the second part about the police shootings, this is a literal conversation. I said to them, if the second part showed bias, do you think I should publish it then? And they say, yeah, then it would make sense.
Or just say, well, I'll tell you what, since they don't seem to fit together, let me just publish the second part and we'll leave the first part out. How do you think they would have reacted to that?
And I said, I guarantee you I'll publish it. We'll see what happens. So it was, I lived under police protection for about 30 or 40 days. I had a 7-day-old daughter at the time. I remember going and shopping for it because, when you have a newborn, you think you have enough diapers, you don't. So I was going to the grocery store to get diapers with an armed guard. It was crazy.
The police don't give you protection. They'll probably drive around your house once in a while, shine the old searchlight on your front door once in a while, but they don't provide protection like that. If you really feel like you've been threatened, you're going to need private security, as he just mentioned.
It was really, truly crazy. It was a really phenomenal experience.
There are a lot of people, many people, and this has been a realization for me over the past few years of my own life, who faced with that exact decision point would make the opposite choice.
Yeah, almost all of them. Almost every professor is going to bury the results. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about physics, chemistry, engineering, geology, biology, and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about highly politically driven fields. They bury good research all the time if it doesn't fit the narrative. And the problem is severe. It's critically severe, far beyond what most people think.
I think the majority of people actually would make the opposite choice. They would think, I'm going to preserve my career, my professional status, my prestige. You were a golden boy at that point. I'm going to preserve my popularity, my ability to get along with my colleagues, someone nice to sit next to me in the cafeteria. Like, every incentive, to use an economics term, would be pushing you to make that choice. What is it inside of you? What can everyone here learn about what allowed you to make the opposite choice?
It's called courage. And unfortunately, professors don't have it. Okay? It's courage and just sheer raw political bias. We get so wrapped up in our own politics that they become more important than the truth. And by the way, conservatives are also bad at this as well. This is not relegated to just liberals. The only reason why it's more of a liberal problem is because they dominate so much of the university settings. But if you have a university that's dominated by conservatives, you're probably going to have the same problem. You just don't find those universities anywhere. Only certain colleges within a university might be conservative. For example, the agricultural school or the School of Engineering might be relatively conservative, but that's about it. Maybe business.
To make the choice that would force you to suffer all of the consequences you would come to suffer, some a direct result and some adjacent to it.
I don't covet what they covet. And I tell my undergraduates every year in the final lecture of my undergraduate classes, each one of them, the key to Harvard is get a great education without letting this place change you. It's really important. It can be corrupting. So not every incentive was pushing in that direction, because every day I have to look myself in the mirror and say, what are you here for? What did you leave behind? I did not grow up wanting to go to Harvard. I didn't. I really didn't. I wanted to do something. And I, like many others in here, I want to acknowledge that, have suffered a lot of losses in my life. My grandmother's no longer here. My father is dead. I don't know where my mother is. They're all gone. Every single cousin is gone. My favorite cousin, the day he got released out of prison after 25 years, someone walked up behind him and shot him directly in the head. So I have to make this journey worth it. I am here because I want to solve problems. I am here because I have seen so much talent in these neighborhoods, and I know they know bullshit when they see it. So I'm not going to lie to them. I wouldn't be able to show my face in these places if I told lies to them, like, oh, I heard this result from you. The thing about it is, if you do a result, what has happened with the actual police departments is that because they actually believe the results and they're willing to reform on the lower level uses of force because someone told the truth about the others. And, it's the importance of being thought of someone, of being an actual truth teller is so, so very important. Maybe not in the moment. But I didn't go to Harvard to have Chardonnay at 10:30 in the morning. I just don't want it. It's not my thing. And it's okay if it's someone else's thing. It's just not my thing.
Compare him to Eric Stewart, the criminal justice professor at Florida State University, who fabricated evidence to prove the woke theory of the time. He actually made up data Talk about the difference in integrity between this man and Eric Stewart. Now, it was lucky for us that one of Eric Stewart's graduate students spilled the beans and refused to let Eric get away with it. That's the only reason why Eric got in trouble and was ultimately dismissed from Florida State. But I've been telling everybody, Eric Stewart is not the exception. He's the norm. There's a ton of this going on. And sure, physicists and chemists and engineers, they get caught doing bad things from time to time, but those instances are relatively rare. And obviously, it's because it's easy to replicate those experiments. So if you go fibbing, people will find out pretty quickly. Plus, there's nothing hugely political at stake. People's worldviews are not going to come unraveled just because a certain particle didn't appear in the cloud chamber. Okay? Yeah, it's disappointing, and you might be embarrassed a little if you've been going around talking about how you're going to find it and you don't, but you're not going to have to ditch your worldview. And that's the difference between the hard sciences and the soft sciences.
I went there to make a difference. Truly, I know that sounds naive to many of you. But as I tell my students, remember when you came to Harvard, you had lofty dreams of changing the world. It wasn't downside risk protection, right? Everybody I know who I've seen walk through those ivy doors rocks the boat until they get in the boat, and then they say, steady now. I rocked the boat until I got in the boat, and I said, let's see how fast we can go. And I've fallen out the boat, got run over by the boat. It is what it is. But you got to be for something, right? And so I mean, I actually don't understand those other people. I don't know what they're maximizing.
They're maximizing what Rashad Richey craves, and that is applause, celebration, honor, and ego. That's what it's about. I mean, it's the people like Rashad Richey that drive a lot of your research. Well, he's not smart enough to be a researcher, but he does have the attitude. And you have the Eric Stewarts of the world. Yeah, they want to change the world, but they think that they already know the answer before they even begin the experiment. And so they're always thinking, if I can show X, then I can then use X to make the world better. The trouble is that the experiment produces Y. And so now they can't change the world, so guess what they do? They juggle the numbers to get X. They want X, that's what they're going to get. Seen too much of it.
Let's talk about, yes. Let's talk about getting, I don't know if you can get run over by a boat, but falling out of the boat. So you write this paper, publish it. Your daughter's 7 days old. You have police protection. It's a dumpster fire, probably. That's how you're describing it. And then in 2017, Harvard opens this investigation into allegations from a former assistant who alleged sexual harassment in your communication. Ultimately, you're suspended for 2 years without pay. That ended in 2021. I wondered if you wanted to reflect on any of that at all. And I think the thing I'm personally most curious about is, first of all, do you think that the thought crime of your research put a particular target on your back? And the second is, there's been so many examples like this. How did you maintain, I don't know what other word to use other than your sanity, in a moment where I imagine you felt like the world had been turned upside down?
Yeah, there's a lot there, so you may have to remind me. I want to go back one step, and then we'll go to 2017. We talked about the tough parts about 2016, which were, police protection and all that. But here's the cool part. I received thousands of emails. There was a time in my life during that period where I would say hello to my wife and my newborn, and I had a 3 or 4-year-old at the time. And then I would go up to my office and literally return emails nonstop for 9 or 10 hours. Because, yes, there was a lot of the emails were nasty from both sides. It pissed off nearly everybody. But there were a lot of them that were inquisitive. A woman from Kansas saying, thank you for putting data in this because I'm watching what's going on TV and I don't know what to make of it. Can you help me understand? And one of my secret obsessions, which I will tell you but don't tell anybody, is to force people to have civil discourse. I spend hours doing it. Someone will say to me, someone the other day said to me, that thing you wrote in the journal, that was such dumbassery. I didn't even know that was a word. And blah, 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 blah. And it went on. And I said to him, thanks for the note. I was just saying that top talent should rise to the top. Could you explain to me your side of things? So we go back and forth, 20 emails. In the end, he says, this has just been the greatest conversation. In all seriousness, I've done this thousands of times. I estimate I call them turning them. My turnover rate is about 80%. People want civil discourse. And so that's the great part about what came out is that I was able to be a teacher.
People want civil discourse? All you Kyle supporters out there are going, what? What? Oh, I don't know about this. Well, there you have it. I've been telling you. How many times have I pushed out videos and told people over and over again that the case for police brutality is overblown? It's due to cherry picking. It's taking a few isolated incidences and making it sound as if they are common. And it's gotten people so frightened. If they pull that black person over, they'll probably kill him. I mean, good grief. You have how many? 6 million interactions with police officers every year, and how many of them really go south? A handful. It's rare. There's no search for the truth. There's no search for evidence. So we'll watch the second half a little bit later, but like my video and subscribe to my channel.